The International Air Transport Association, IATA, has said that $143 million in airline revenues have been unable to be repatriated from Nigeria. It added that nearly $1 billion in airline revenues worldwide are unable to be repatriated. This was disclosed by the organization in a statement. IATA has urged the governments to abide by international agreements and treaty obligations to enable the airlines to repatriate those funds. Joining us to discuss more is Mr. Tayo Ojuri, Managing Partner at Aglow Aviation. Thank you so much for joining, sir.
Good morning.
So I wanted to start with that. I think we've got some information on the screen here where we show, I guess, the amount, that's total amount, 936 million or so. These are the 4 countries that I think account for 60% of the total amount that's not been able to be repatriated. Zimbabwe, 142 million, Nigeria, 143, Bangladesh, 146, Lebanon, 170. Well, I guess, for the sake of our viewers, how does FX for airlines get trapped? I mean, thinking about somebody flying from Nigeria to London, you pay Naira. So just to help us out, if you can take us through that.
Yes, most of the international airlines, what we call legacy airlines, fly into those countries from their hubs. Say British Airways comes in from Britain, UK from Heathrow. When they sell their tickets, they have a sales agents and they have travel agents that they sell through in the local market. So they have lots of tickets being purchased out of Nigeria. Let's be specific to Nigeria. And we have lots of Nigerians that travel to Europe and North America. That's our primary destination. It used to be Europe, North America, and Dubai until it was UAE, actually, specifically, until it was restricted lately. So with those purchases, after periodically those funds are repatriated back to the home country, because there's a limit to which you can actually use those funds here. It's a lot of money. And if you actually want to put it in numbers and figure, look at a flight that goes every day with about 250 minimum or 300 passengers at about 300,000 naira, or minimum average 250,000 naira. So you see the amount of money that they generate every day. So with that, they have to send that money back. So what the implication is going to be for Nigerian traveling out of Nigeria, for Nigerians traveling and buying tickets in Nigeria, is that the flight tickets are going to be more expensive buying from Nigeria.
Fantastic.
Because,
go ahead.
Because they're not able to repatriate that money. It's about 72 billion naira now, approximately.
Let's take a look at a quote from Will Walsh, who is I think the Director General of IATA. Yeah, I want to get your take on his this quote here, where he says that Nigeria blocking 143 million, governments have prevented nearly 1 billion of airline revenues from being repatriated. This contravenes international conventions and could slow the recovery of travel and tourism in affected markets as the airline industry struggles to recover. Accurate? What do you make of his comment?
It is, but let's dig deeper.
Yeah.
We see that airlines, due to COVID, actually are bleeding, as it were.
Yes.
There was a forecast, and there's still a forecast that airline business is not going to pick up till 2024. Now, we actually forecasted that we were going to lose about $39 million this year. Half of this year, we've seen we're bleeding at $95 million. So with this scenario of not being able to repatriate the funds back to the home country, that's going to affect the bottom line for these international airlines that actually need the funds to operate and pick up. If you look at that vis-a-vis the summer traffic now, the summer traffic has actually not improved as where we were pre-COVID. We saw London Heathrow had the highest numbers in July for 1.5 million passengers throughput at London Heathrow. That's just a minuscule percentage in comparison to what it was pre-COVID. So that's going to really affect the airlines with the operation and their bottom line.
Thank you, sir. I want to move to this matter of concessions, with the union saying, that is, I think it's NUATE, National Union of Transport Employees, saying that the concession plans that Nigeria has will not succeed because of pending lawsuits and a number of things. What do you make of that?
The concession in Nigeria, especially in the aviation sector, has been convoluted. And yes, just to make my opinion is I'm pro concessioning.
Right, okay.
However, it's just the position that I take. It's the platform and the channel that it's used. It has to be transparent. It has to be inclusive of all major stakeholders. Yes, according to the ICRC procedures, the minister, along as the ministry, have been doing a lot of stakeholder engagement. But we have lots of questions that need to be answered, such as how was that model of the concession arrived at? Why these 4 airports? Why can't we have other models? Why, again, there are lots of lingering legal issues prior to this. How are those going to be addressed? And look at the timelines. There's now an RFP that was released earlier this week. With the RFP in place, we look at the timeline for February 2022. With elections and the way things work here, we find out that February timeline is not sacrosanct, neither is it cast in stone. So we find out those are lots of underlying factors that would affect the concession and would not make it a success, in my opinion, or might be a challenging factor to the success.
Right. Thank you for that. I want to go to the UAE and this Nigeria and I guess South Africa being excluded from the visa on arrival. Is that a big deal? I mean, you can still get a visa, you just can't get it when you land in the United Arab Emirates. What do you make of that?
There are lots of there are lots of things against us going to UAE.
Yeah.
Don't forget that Emirates has stopped operating in Nigeria since March of this year. And with that, it's just been moving dates since the 7th, 15th, 20th, now 20th has come, and we don't know when, we cannot put a finger on the pulse on when exactly the Emirates is going to start. It's not just, there are lots of factors underlining this issue. There's the aeropolitics part of it. There's the fact that our numbers for the COVID test are not real, or they cannot actually have a single source of truth to verify our COVID test. And there's a mandate that they're saying they want the 4-hour test as well in conjunction with a PCR test. There are lots of demands from the UAE government that they're placing on the Nigerian government that Nigeria is not willing to agree to. So that's all affecting. And don't forget that there are other factors in UAE where we have the cult issues within Nigerians there. And then there's a Expo 2021 that is now started. With that Expo 2021, they want all the ducks to be in the row, and they do not want anything to affect their organization there. So with all this said, I think what they're just allowing the Nigerian passengers they're allowing to come to the UAE now, actually those that have work permits. And you still restrict Nigerians to have 14 days prior to Nigerians to have isolation for 14 days prior to coming to the UAE. So all this is affecting us. But eventually, when this opens up, I think we'll find out what works best for both countries, because there's lots of trade, there's high volume of trade, there's high volume of tourism between the UAE and Nigeria, and I think eventually it will get resolved.
All right, optimistic note there. This new startup airline Breeze, I mean, we've had you on the show before. You've talked about the struggles of the aviation industry. To see Breeze able to raise $200 million, is that a bright spot? Are you encouraged to see that in this climate? This, obviously it's a U.S. airline, but what do you make of it?
Yes, actually, I listened to a podcast by the Center for Aviation, CAPA, and he said, like every situation has a disruption at the end of it. So you find out that when we had the economic recession in 2008, we had the Googles and all these new disruptors, economic disruptors that came up. So we actually have 4 new airlines that came up, and I consider Breeze a disruptor. They're actually merging technology with kindness. They're actually modeling going through underserved areas. And don't forget, David Neilman has actually been a success story.
He has.
Yes, he has actually. We have WestJet in Canada, we have JetBlue, we have Azul, and we have Maurice Air that he has actually made a success with. And perception is reality. He's done a good job. He's actually been able to set up those strong airlines. So they trust him to build the fort. It's not just a lightning. It has precedence to show for it. So it's actually going to be able to show over the next with Breeze that this is a success. And they've actually done so well so far, so good so far.
Great stuff. Just a couple minutes to go. If you're using, I don't know, is Breeze enough of an example to suggest that things down the line, if a startup like this can pop up, that the overall aviation sector could be on its way to recovery, or is that a one-off, an anomaly?
It's not a one-off. People need to move.
Right.
We're social animals. We need to move. We need to actually move either for business, for family, for pleasure. We will not be locked down forever. So there's a need to move. And don't forget, Breeze is actually within the U.S. What we've seen, and this is the data showing us, either within China, within U.S., continental U.S., domestic market, aviation market has picked up and will pick up rather than intercontinental market because of all the restrictions. So what we're saying is we're going to see that movement and that growth within the domestic market, which Breeze represents, and we're going to see those growth within even Nigerian market. We're seeing the growth, lots of unprecedented increase within passenger traffic. Within Nigeria, we have new entrants there. We'll continue to have new entrants because there's going to be that growth.
Great stuff. So is that enough of a substitute for the struggling intercontinental parts of aviation? I mean, the fact that we're seeing domestics picking up in the US, Africa, and so on.
It's not a substitute, but it will just be, it will be foundation. Prior to that, when the confidence and the new proposals are put, such like the IATA travel pass, which actually gives confidence to travel across countries, and actually the travel bubbles are opened up, that actually gives them confidence for intercontinental travel, and we're going to see that growth, which will be layered on the domestic markets.
All right. The managing partner at Aglow Aviation, Mr. Tayo Ojiri, as always enjoy talking aviation.
Same
with
here.
you. Thank you for joining us, sir.